August 15th, 1971, a Sunday evening. Richard Nixon appeared on American television and said something that permanently changed every wallet, every savings account, and every pension on the planet. Most people watching had no idea what it meant. The ones who did said nothing publicly. What Nixon did that night severed the connection between the American dollar and the only thing that had ever given it real value. Every dollar you have ever held, every dollar you have sold, every dollar your parents saved, every dollar sitting in your pension right now, backed by nothing, not gold, not assets, not anything physical. A promise. And here is what nobody told you about that promise. It was already being broken before Nixon finished a sentence. 53 years later, in 2024, something happened that the financial press reported in 3 separate stories. Nobody connected them. When you connect them, the picture that emerges changes everything about how you understand the money in your pocket right now. This is that connection. Stay with me, because what happened between 1971 and 2024 is the most consequential financial story of the last century, hiding in plain sight inside headlines you read every day. By the end of this, those headlines will never look the same. Before 1971, the global financial system ran on a simple rule. Dollar equals gold. Everything else equals dollars. That was it. In 1944, as World War II was still being fought, 44 nations gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, and agreed on this arrangement. America held most of the world's gold. The dollar was backed by it at a fixed rate. Every other currency was backed by the dollar. The system worked because the constraint was real. If America printed too many dollars, foreign nations could demand gold in exchange. That demand would drain American reserves. That drain would force fiscal discipline. It was a leash on government spending. For 25 years, it held. Then America started spending money it did not have. Vietnam, the Great Society, 2 massive programs, 1 expensive war, no new taxes. Here's what that looked like in practice. By 1966, foreign central banks were holding more dollars than America had gold to back them. France noticed first. President de Gaulle called America's position an exorbitant privilege. Then he did something about it. He sent a French battleship to New York, loaded it with dollars, and sailed home with gold. Other nations followed. By 1971, America's gold reserves had fallen by more than half. Nixon faced a simple choice: restore discipline, cut spending, accept the political pain, or cut the leash. He cut the leash and called it temporary. 53 years later, it has never been reattached. Here is what happened in the silence between that Sunday evening in 1971 and the 3 quiet moves China made in 2024 that nobody connected. When Nixon closed the gold window, the dollar didn't collapse. It did something more dangerous. It drifted. Slowly, quietly, over decades. Here is what that drift looked like in your life. If you saved $10,000 in 1971 and left it in cash, today it effectively buys what $1,300 used to, not because you made bad decisions, because the money itself was quietly losing value year by year through the mechanical expansion of the money supply. In 1971, there were approximately $628 billion in existence. By 2024, over $21 trillion. Same dollar. 33 times more of them. Every new dollar printed effectively diluted every existing dollar. Now here is the part that matters. New money does not distribute equally. It enters through the financial system first. Banks, asset markets, government contractors. The people and institutions closest to the printer spend it before prices rise. By the time new money reaches ordinary wages and savings, prices have already adjusted upward. This is what economists call inflation. In practice, it was a sustained 53-year transfer of purchasing power from ordinary savers, people who worked, saved, and trusted the system, to the institutions closest to the money printer. And it happened without announcement, without debate, without anyone being asked. Now watch what the nations absorbing this for 53 years quietly started doing, because this is not a story about the past. It is a story about 3 moves made in 2024 that are still happening right now. In 2013, China held $1.3 trillion in U.S. government debt. Today, significantly less. Quietly selling. At the same time, it started buying something else. Gold. Central banks globally purchased over 1,037 tons of gold in 2024 alone, the fastest accumulation since 1967. The buyers were not Western institutions. China, India, Turkey, Poland, Kazakhstan. Every ton of gold was effectively a hedge against the dollar system Nixon built in 1971. Then the second move. The share of global trade settled in dollars fell below 50% for the first time since Bretton Woods. Yuan settlements. Rupee transactions. Bilateral currency swaps bypassing dollar clearing entirely. Not announced, simply executed. Then the third move. Saudi Arabia, the nation whose 1974 petrodollar agreement with America created the structural dollar demand that replaced the gold standard, began accepting yuan for Chinese oil purchases. For 50 years, oil was priced in dollars. That arrangement forced every oil importing nation to hold dollars. That forced demand was what gave the post-1971 dollar its stability. When Saudi Arabia accepted yuan, it functionally began dismantling that arrangement. 3 moves, 3 separate headlines. Nobody connected them. Connected. They tell a single story. The system Nixon built in 1971 on the foundation of dollar faith is being systematically replaced, not through confrontation, through patient, methodical accumulation of alternatives. One shovelful at a time. Before we go further, I want your answer in the comments. Nixon closed the gold window in 1971 and called it temporary. 53 years later, it has never been reopened. Was that the most consequential financial lie ever told? Or a necessary decision that saved the global economy? Drop your answer below. Because what history says about that question will change how you see what is happening right now. This transition has happened before. Spain's silver empire gave way to Amsterdam. Amsterdam gave way to London. London gave way to the dollar. Every transition followed the same distribution. The institutions controlling the old system adapted. The ordinary people holding the old currency absorbed the cost. When Britain lost reserve status after World War II, British institutions survived, repositioned, found roles in the new dollar architecture. The British worker who had saved diligently in pounds experienced a decade of austerity, rationing until 1954, purchasing power declining, same pattern, different century. The dollar transition, if it continues at the pace visible in 2024, will follow identical logic. Institutions closest to the transition, those holding gold, building yuan exposure, positioning in alternative systems, will adapt. The ordinary saver holding dollar-denominated savings, dollar-denominated pensions, dollar-denominated retirement accounts will functionally absorb the cost of 53 years of exorbitant privilege unwinding. Not through a single dramatic announcement, through the slow drift that began on a Sunday evening in 1971 and accelerated, quietly, in 2024. And here's the question that history forces, the one that applies to every person watching this, regardless of which country you live in or which currency you hold. Every ordinary person caught in a reserve currency transition faces the same problem. They discover it late. The German saver in 1923 did not lack intelligence. The British worker in 1946 did not lack diligence. They lacked the framework to connect what they were seeing into the picture it actually formed. Right now, the gold purchasing headlines, the yuan settlement headlines, the petrodollar headlines are being reported separately. Connected, they form the same picture. A reserve currency transition, moving at the pace that transitions always move. Slowly enough that most people dismiss it. Fast enough that by the time it is undeniable, the costs have already been distributed. Nixon made his decision on a Sunday evening without asking you. The nations building the replacement system made theirs without asking you. The only question that remains is whether you connect what they decided before or after the transition completes. History is very specific about which group absorbs the cost. Do you think the dollar transition is already irreversible, or can it still be stopped? Drop your answer below. If this connected what most financial coverage deliberately keeps separate, subscribe. The next episode goes deeper into what is being built to replace it.